redo this. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Unfair Advantage podcast. Today's guest didn't just launch a business, he launched it 3 days before the world shut down. Clayton Pantano is the founder of InTrust Marketing, a fast-growing digital agency based in Tacoma, Washington that specializes in what he calls search site social. But this background isn't just about marketing, it's about grit. From working full-time in the automotive industry while juggling business classes to delivering groceries and dashing orders just to keep his dream alive, Clayton turned what should have been a death sentence for a brand new agency beginning right at the beginning of the pandemic into his unfair advantage. When his bank account hit $3.71, he didn't quit. He went harder. Fast forward to today, and Trust Marketing has helped over 100 businesses nationwide grow their online presence, and Clayton is leading a global team alongside his wife, Amanda. This episode is a masterclass in building under pressure, betting on yourself, and transforming failure into fuel. Clayton, welcome on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Clayton, I kind of did a little intro on InTrust Marketing, what you're doing. One of the things I didn't mention in the intro is you and your wife just had a beautiful baby girl. So you're going through the early hurdles, I'm going to call it, being a father while running a business. My son's 9 months old, so like right there with you on all of that. But why don't you kind of give us a little bit more of an in-depth intro of like what InTrust Marketing is, who you guys serve, what you do, and all of that?
Yeah, so you nailed it in the intro.
Started about 5 years ago. When we started, it was just social media marketing. That was what I really wanted to focus on. And then throughout the first few years, we were all over the place. We would add in logo design or graphic design or email marketing. We would just kind of take whatever work we could get. And then throughout the last couple of years, we've really refined down to search, site, and social. So social media marketing, search engine marketing, and then website design and development. And that's just allowed us to really focus on the areas that we feel like we're strong in. We work with mostly service-based businesses. There's, the one-off product-based business, but I believe in sticking to what you're good at and what your team is good at. And we found that primarily like service-based businesses are what we understand. So we have a kind of a joke in our company, but it really summarizes what we do. And that's we just connect great companies with great customers. So if somebody asks what we do, we connect great companies with great customers. That is the one-liner. And people can get it because we work with people who have local markets that just need to be seen, heard, and understood what they do.
Yeah.
They just need to be discovered, and they have a great service, and they just need somebody to promote it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so Clayton, I mentioned in the intro, like InTrust Marketing began just 3 days or so before like Washington shut down completely from the pandemic. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri at the time. During the pandemic, I was in Kansas City, but I lived in like the suburbs of Kansas, actually, right on the borderline. So like the shutdowns were lax for us,
Yeah.
to put it lightly. I think Washington was one of those states where it wasn't as laxed, if I
Yes.
recall correctly. And so, like, take us back to that moment. Like, what was going through your mind when everything just came to a complete halt?
Yeah, it's really interesting to look back at it because Washington was one of the first states to shut down. It was like
Mhm.
alongside New York and having some of the first cases. And so when it came out, I had been out of my job for just a few days. I was still really excited. And when those shutdowns came out, we all collectively just were like, okay, this truly is 2 weeks, which is what was
Mhm.
said to us was 2 weeks to flatten the curve, which
Yep.
little did we know turned into 2 years in Washington of some sort of shutdown or restriction. So at first, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay, cool,
Yeah.
whatever, it's totally fine. And then as probably 2 weeks turned into 4, turned into 8, turned into 12, the reality started to settle in of how the heck am I going to do this? Because I was so green and new as an entrepreneur, I didn't know how to position what it is that we do. Now,
Yep.
looking back, the world was turning digital, and I can look back with 5 years of experience and see that I should have been pivoting our offering to help businesses get online during the time so that they could get in front of their customers. No, I have no business. So I just pushed and pushed and pushed and tried and tried and tried. And it took almost 9 months to get any sort of traction. And it was just like every month bank account gets a little lower, a little lower, a
Hmm.
little lower. So truly, I had no idea what to expect. I was like, I
Yeah.
guess we'll figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely. As well as things like I had a different business during the pandemic, and it's like we were all online, mobile app we were building, and so like I had to think about a lot of those things like that like you were going through here of like there's a lot of companies that like they went under because of I
Yeah.
say because of the pandemic, lack of planning and preparation, having good cash flow, be willingness to
Yeah.
adapt and pivot, is really what caused things to close down as a result of the pandemic. There's a lot of people who like businesses began out of the pandemic. There was a silver lining, I'm going to call it, for a lot of people during the pandemic. Most people at that point probably would have said, like you said, you're like you'd just been out from your job for a couple of days, like you could have easily
Mhm.
called him back up and said, "Hey, like, let's see what's going on. Is there a way I could get that job back?" Like, or gone and applied for a different job that was remote work or whatever. Like, so most people would have hit pause, walked away, whatever that may be. Like, what kept you going, especially after those first 2 to 6 weeks, where like it became this. Okay, this isn't going to be just 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Like, this is our new reality for a while.
I have no idea. I think about that all the time, and I
Yeah.
don't know what it was that I stayed in it for. I think honestly, my sometimes my unfair advantage is that I'm too stupid to quit at times. Like I just don't walk away from stuff. And I think that that's what it was. It was like an unwillingness to accept that that was true.
Yeah.
That I was, no matter what, I was going to find a way. And I think that that was what it was for me, is no matter what, I'm going to find a way to make this work. I just gave up. I was comfortable. I was saving money. I was making progress towards my future. Everything in so many ways was just right. And I just was like, I'm gonna figure this out. A first year of entrepreneurship is always bad. It's always hard. This is no
Hmm.
different. And so that's when I was listening to a lot of the podcasts from, Andy Frisella with the MFCEO project, or the Real Business Owners projects, or the Real Business Owners podcast, the Ed Milet's. And I was just continually surrounding myself. And the amount of times where I was like, Andy Frisella made, 50 grand in the first 12 years. I think I can figure out a year. And it was just like, how do I buy one more day? How do I buy one more day? Maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and it's different. So I
Yeah.
think that that's really what it was just like this faith and this hope that the next day would be better. And eventually that was right. It was eventually correct, but it took a long time for that to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things like a lot of people think, the game of entrepreneurship is you make a ton of money, right? And you mentioned Andy Frisella is like living off like 50 grand is what he made like over that time period. And like I think of like me and I just announced yesterday like the exit of my agency and everything like that. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people say like I had one person who already made a comment like, "Oh man, I hope he made it out with a bag." Like
Yeah.
you think it's all like you're making a crap ton of cash the entire time, and then if you do something like an exit, you make a crap ton of cash and everything, and it's like this isn't the whole deal all the time with what you see of like the exits where like Facebook acquires some like software company and this and that. And that
Yeah.
founders made millions and all that stuff. But it's one of those things that like you just keep kind of just trying to figure it out in a way.
Yeah.
And you just keep going and somehow
Yeah.
things just end up working for you.
Eventually, I had a great professor when I was in college, and one of the things that they would say when we would get stuck on a project is he would just walk up to you and he'd be like, everything is figure outable, and would just walk away. And you're like, well, what does that even mean? And it was so frustrating.
Yeah.
And I remember about a year, maybe 14 months into entrepreneurship, when things started to turn around and started to like see some progress, I remember I sent him a message and I said, I can't tell you how many times a day I've repeated to myself, everything is figure outable. Because it would be like, okay, this horrible thing just happened. How do I figure it out? What's my next move?
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, that buys me 24 hours. Okay,
Yep.
next thing. And that's just, rarely is it that glory story, that like that acquisition or that massive home run on the first swing. Like those are
Yep.
anomalies, but social media makes it feel so common, and it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things like you mentioned, like, everything can get figured out, right? And so like one of the things you mentioned is that like your bank account dropped to like $3 and like 71 cents. I've been
Yeah,
there. I've had my wife call me in tears because she went to go swipe the card at
hmm,
Costco or Target or whatever it was, and like we had no money account. We were negative in the account. Like
yeah,
been there, and just trying to figure out like where the hell is this money going to come from.
yeah,
And again, like somehow you just figure it out. But like when that happened, like it's one of those things. Like for me, I have a screenshot of my phone of like that defining moment. Like when my account hits something like this, mentally you're going through a lot, right? And so like what kind of mental hurdles were you going through at that time and like how did you break through those?
yeah. I remember that moment really strongly. And the reason why I remember it so strongly is because I actually took a video. I drove home and I recorded like a 3-minute video on my phone talking about how it felt in that moment. And I go back and I watch it. Whenever I think about quitting to this day, I go back and I watch it. And I think the mental hurdle was, how the hell am I going to figure this out? Because I was doing the math and it's like, I had these bills due in this many days. This is what I have. This is how much will come in. And the math is not mathing in my favor right now. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so it was, again, I need to find a way. I need, whether
Hmm.
that's selling some stuff that I had sitting aside, whether that's something like going and door dashing, going and Instacarting, things like that, just getting creative. And there were some weeks where I'm like, I got to put the business on hold for a week and I have to go DoorDash almost full time to go make this, $1,000 so that I can make my car payment, pay my insurance, and buy groceries. And then from
Yeah.
there, I'm going to figure it out after that. And it
Yep.
was just like continually trying to just buy into the next thing, buy into the next thing. And so I think the mental hurdle there was having no idea what to do next, but knowing that the least I could do was I could go and exchange my time for money somehow.
Yep.
And it was unpleasant, but it would get us to another week. And then a client would sign. You're like, okay, yes, this, at the time, $300 a month is a big game changer for me because now I could breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was just one domino falling into the next. And eventually there's some momentum there. But man, the hurdles felt like walls. They felt like
Yeah.
a skyscraper in front of me. There
Yeah.
was no foreseeable way through it, but
Yeah.
it works out.
Yeah, and oftentimes like you're sitting there and you're like, I got this lever to pull, I got this lever to pull, I got this lever to pull, and it's like, which direction do I go? And so sometimes you just have to like map it out all on paper and like figure out like is going do what you did to go DoorDash or whatever, like is that the right move or should I just double down on what I'm doing or should I try this
Yeah.
differently? Like, right? Like there's all these different levers to pull in which like you oftentimes don't even know like as entrepreneurs like which is the right lever to pull. You just have to pull one and
Yeah.
see what works. Oftentimes we pull too many levers at once and it's
Yeah.
like then you don't know what worked because you're pulling this lever, you're pulling that lever, and then it's like okay, like something's working but I don't know what it is. And so that's something we oftentimes have to go through as well. So at what point did like this shift happening, right? Like to me there's this defining moment I've had where I went from like there was even some moments where I was like I opened up my phone and like downloaded like the Instacart app, the DoorDash app, that kind of stuff because I was like I'm gonna have to go do this. And then I'm like, no, like I'm past this. I don't need to do this anymore. This is just like a quick fix. And
Yeah.
like Brad's past that. And so like at
Yeah.
what point did you hit that and like where was that mindset shift begin to come?
Yeah, I think so. The $3.71 in the bank account happens, Christmas Eve or Christmas Day 2020. And then after that, about a week later, I get dropped by a client. So it was a kick in the pants and then like a secondary I'm on the ground kick in the pants. And it was like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. That's when the door dashing starts, the Instacarting, the things of that nature. And then there was this kind of culmination, everything comes to a head where I had this like full mental breakdown. And it was one of the lowest points I've ever been at. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do next. all I know is that I am not okay as a human being. And that was like at the
Mhm.
moment I realized that I was so low and so depressed that I was like, I don't know what the point of this is. And so I decided, I was like, the least I can do is go and do a 75 hard. And I'm going to take it one day at a time and one day at a time and just focus on these inputs. And so that's what I realized was like raising my thermostat of like,
Okay.
okay, I'm not going to do that because I'm building this confidence. I'm building this belief in myself. And by the end of that, my business had completely shifted over that 2.5 months where it was like, we're making $750 a month in January of 2020 or 2021 to, okay, now we had a $5,000 a month a couple months later, which feels like crazy after going through, $4 in your bank account
Yeah.
to, just a few months later, by the end of that year, the agency was doing 10 grand plus a month. So it's this very quick progression and shift to, okay, now I can't go and focus back on that. So probably about 6 months later went by
Yeah.
after that moment where I was like, okay, door dashing isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Instacarting isn't going to happen because it takes it away. And every once in a while, still to this day, I'll go and do it and tell myself that I'm going to go do it. And I will get so annoyed because it's like I'm sitting here for like 16 bucks and I just drove around and did all this stupid stuff. But it just reminds me of like, okay, entrepreneurship is hard,
Yeah.
but it could be way worse. And then it's like I go home and it's like it's invigorating because you're like, okay, I'm ready to go now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a 6 month basically thermostat turn up where it's like I'm just cranking this and cranking this and cranking this. And it was a quick transition.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, those things like you then begin to kind of have that time value ratio as well of like,
Yes.
that same time I could go do something else, if it may be working a job, maybe doing Instacart, maybe doing whatever. If I invest that same time in my business, if one client at 1,500, 1,800, 2 grand a month on a 1 year contract, like you sign those people at that time frame, like you're gonna make a hell
That's
of a lot
huge.
you're gonna make a hell of a lot more money that way, right? And
Yes.
so those are just things to like that like a lot of people don't think about is like they go to try to get that short term satisfaction rather than like the long term gratification that they can get from like just like hunkering down and like executing
Yep.
on their business and everything like that. And so, that was back, 2021. I had a question here of like what habits and choices helped you kind of dig out of that hole and begin building momentum. You mentioned 75 hard and everything like that. Is there anything else that like you're like, this is what really helped me besides, doing this 75 hard program that really helped you like dial things up?
Yeah, I think just discipline in general. It's been challenging now as a new dad, but having that kind of focus on me first,
Yeah.
that was probably the shift. Was I thought to be a successful entrepreneur, the only thing I could do was to like basically sell my soul to my business. And then what I ultimately realized was that by being a better human being and being more fulfilled and being like, I'm just going to go do really hard stuff and like that gave me the satisfaction, and then I just showed up in a more confident way to the business. So it's like I think my one guiding principle is to like always put Clayton as a human being first, and then the business is just something that I do. And when I
Yeah.
made that shift, losing a client was way less personal.
Yep.
Not winning a deal was way less personal. Winning stuff was way less personal. It was just
Yeah.
like, okay, cool, the business just got a new client. Awesome. Celebrate it, move on. We lost
Yep.
a client, okay, mourn it for a couple of minutes and move on. And it was
Yep.
just like it allowed me to show up way less emotional to things that were just an objective situation and
Yeah.
started removing that emotion out of it. So I think that that's like discipline and just having those like healthy habits to pour into myself as a human being are like number one.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to like I mentioned the intro, the business now, not just you, it's you and your wife and you have a team and everything. Obviously I'm
Yeah.
sure right now like her focus is baby and everything like that.
Yeah.
But like what does that look like? Like how has that worked for you guys, husband, wife, now parents and everything like that, running the business and like what's been key to making that work as you grow?
Communication. Um, and honestly, me setting aside my ego a lot of times. So what we had was Amanda and I have worked together for about 2 years now. The company is about 5.5 years old. So I had 3.5 years of doing things my way with my
Yeah.
systems, with my thinking. And then you have someone coming into you that I think as men, sometimes we want to posture to like seem like we have it all together. So there was
Hmm.
definitely like a moment where I fought, I would say like I fought to get my way rather than setting aside, taking a step back and being like, oh, your way makes way more sense. And so what I ended up realizing was that my wife has the most amazing skill set in the places where I don't. And she came in and she's a very systematic thinker. She's an operator through and through. Like she wants to be
Yeah.
given this blob of tasks and then organize it, plan it, and execute and hand it off to somebody, which she ended up being an amazing addition to the team once I realized that I was in the way. So it's
Yeah.
a lot of communication. And then there's also with her being my wife on a personal level, just being like, we're not talking about business right now. We,
Yep.
it comes up and it creeps in, but then there's a moment where you're sitting there and you're like, man, I haven't talked to my wife in like 3 weeks. I'm talking to my account manager, my director of operations. We're going to dinner. We're going on a date. I'm
Yep.
not taking my phone out of my pocket the whole time. If I talk about business, we're done. Like we need to just focus on this and us. So that's been the biggest thing. It's just like
Yep.
prioritizing us as a married couple and not,
Yep.
business partners.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things like my wife has a job right now, and like a lot of my choices as a business owner like actually go through my wife. She's actually in like our company Slack channels, and like when she can, she jumps in and provides feedback and then input and everything like that. Part of that is like when we're blessed for the day for to bring her home from work and everything like that. Like I want her fully involved in the business, and so like why wait till then to start like embedding her into the business now? But I agree, like there's nights where it's like she's like, we're not talking about like business
Yeah.
today. And like there was nights where she's like, I'd like get to dinner. She's like, so what's the new software you found today or this or that? Cause like, yeah, it's just what it was.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so excited about everything we're going on. We just talk about those different things. You also have a remote team around the world. You and I have talked about like my company Talent Fuse and everything like that. And that's what we do is help agency owners hire offshore talent. What has been kind of like the key to making that work? There's different time zones, there's cultural differences, there's language differences, all that stuff.
Yeah. I think it comes back down to like systems and processes. So what we're really lucky to have is that I did everything for a period of time. So I was the one creating the content. I was the one managing these processes. I still have, at the end of the day, pretty much every skill set that somebody in my company provides, I can do, which is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
But what that's given us is a really in-depth understanding. And so Amanda's the same way on the social media side, which is a lot of what we do. She's done social media management and content creation, and she has that background as well. So what we've been able to do is basically create a repeatable process for our team and then provide that feedback in a way that they're able to understand it, regardless of like the cultural differences or language barriers at times. What we've been able to do is just figure out a framework that just works for our team. And then it comes back down to like communication because everyone communicates a little bit differently. It can be really easy to get very sloppy in our communication channels,
Hmm.
but it's like being very focused on keeping those uniform so that everybody
Yeah.
knows what to expect and what is expected of them.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Clayton, as we're wrapping up here, one of the things that I always ask people on this is like, you look back to like 2020, Clayton. You look back to the other agency owner who is just getting going, just left their job, and I'm gonna say life hits them. Hopefully there's not another pandemic that hits them that
Yeah.
shuts down the entire world, right? But thinking back to that moment and somebody going through what you were going through then, somebody who is having to um do that DoorDash or that Instacart just to keep a roof over their head, their bills paid while they're building their dream. Like, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One is it's worth it. Whether it's this opportunity that pays off or the next one or the next one, there are so many lessons that you'll learn in the process that are going to forever change you as a human being.
Hmm.
And whether that's good or not, you will be utterly unemployable for the rest of your life once you taste entrepreneurship, because you'll think about getting a job 100 times and you go and look at the job and you're like, there's no way. But I think that there's no, you can't put a value on grit at the end of the day. Like, just keep pushing, you'll figure it out, you'll learn new things, that eventually you'll have a breakthrough and you'll make some progress. I think that there's a thing on the back of that is, don't start thinking you've made it ever. I think that that can be, complacency will creep in and hit you like a ton of bricks. And by the time you
Yeah.
realize it, it'll be too late to stop the slide. And then the last thing I will say is that there's a lag period, and it can be really frustrated to deal with that lag. But regardless, good decisions or bad decisions typically have a 3 to 6 month lag period. So as you start making all of these positive inputs and you're like, why isn't it paying it off? Why isn't it paying off? Why isn't it paying off? It pays off eventually. It may be 90 days or 180 days or 365 days later, but there's no exchange for good inputs. Just keep making
Hmm.
them, because eventually they do pay off in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Clayton, thanks again for hopping on today and recording. I know especially right now, time is the most valuable that it can be with having a newborn and everything like that at home. For those who are listening, please don't forget to like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review so I can continue to produce more episodes like this and invite more founders like Clayton here in the episode. And if you're in the Tacoma, Washington area, or you own a service-based business, you're looking for a marketing agency to work with that has faith-based values with them, somebody who's gone through the grit, has done everything he can to make sure that his agency is a success, and will do the same thing for your business as well. Reach out to Clayton with InTrust Marketing, and he'd be more than happy to help support you in your team. But until next time, this is your unfair advantage.